I thought I'd share with you some of my thoughts about what's been occurring in Australia since the Olympics. Now, you would know that a number of questions have been asked about what happened at the Paris Games with the Australian Olympic team. Coming off the back of Tokyo, where it was one of our most successful games, Paris we achieved 1 bronze medal. Rowing Australia have called for an inquiry, and that they've said that they will leave no stone unturned. Yet what I found puzzling is that even before the conclusion, perhaps even the beginning of that inquiry, numbers of coaches have been sacked. Now, I know that a government department exists in its own right, and a number of the roles in a government department exist to support the government department. But Rowing Australia, their role surely is to support Australian athletes, those that have given up probably the most precious time of their life to devote to the sport. They've given up careers, they've given up education, they've often given up family and made a number of sacrifices. And the role of Rowing Australia is to support them. Support them as athletes, support them in their careers, support them as people, and certainly to support their goals for the Olympics. Now, the CEO of Rowing Australia gave an interview to the Australian Financial Review, and she talked about the peaks and troughs, the ebbs and flows of Olympic cycles, and that we've come off Tokyo Games where they did really well, and we're now in a trough, and that the nature of rowing is changing, and that especially in terms of stroke rates, higher stroke rates, and so it's understandable that the peaks and troughs, the ebbs and flows, and the changing nature of the sport has meant that we weren't expected to go as well at this Olympics, and that the coaches, perhaps the inference is that they should have trained for high stroke rates, and the inference also is rowers should have rowed faster. And it seems a little puerile just to say the solution is row faster, as in terms of an excuse or a reason for why we didn't row so well. Well, we had a weaker group of athletes that didn't row fast enough. Well, look, I thought I'd share my experience with Rowing Australia, and maybe that would shed some light into, I think, not necessarily the people within the organisation, but the organisation itself. I certainly see myself as a product of Rowing Australia, and I had the great opportunity at university to row with many future Olympians. In 2017, so we're going back quite a while now, nearly 7 years, I discovered that placing a strip of plastic or a hydrofoil on the top of the blade changed the performance of the blade significantly. And I found that it improved the performance of a blade in 3 ways. It created a less catch slip. It also meant more power transition, and also faster boat speed. And I found in my shed just the other day one of the very first foils or blades where I applied a foil to, and you can see here it has been inbuilt into the blade itself. The very first thing I did was I approached Rowing Australia and I said, look what I found. And I sent them a number of strips of right angle PVC, and I said, look, if you place that onto the top of the blade, you will have a change in performance of the blade, and it's worth looking at, it's worth investigating. In 2018, finally, they committed to doing a trial, and the morning of the trial, I went to the Sydney International Regatta Centre, and where we planned to do this test, and no one was there. And I thought, oh my goodness, what's happened? Have I got the date wrong? Well, I called and they changed the venue. They were going to do it on the Nepean River. And I thought, oh, okay. Nepean River, there's a high flow, and it's going to be interesting to see what results they get. Okay, so we do some testing. They swap out the oars. They were using the peach system, oars with foils, oars without foils. And then I was waiting for the results. And 2 weeks go by and no results. Email again, no results. Email again. And eventually I stopped getting responses. And finally I gave up. There was no way I was going to ever get any conclusion to the study or the test that Rowing Australia did. It wasn't until Martino Goretti won using the foil the 2019 World Championships that some questions were asked because Martino Goretti beat an undefeated Australian rower called Shaun Murphy. Now Shaun Murphy was expected to win, and he was defeated. And there was a parliamentary inquiry. The upper house, I won't go through the nature of the Australian Parliament, but there was an upper house inquiry into how did this happen. Ian Randall had shared with you a new design. What did you do, Rowing Australia? And Rowing Australia said, well, yes, we did some testing of the foil. It is personal preference, and then they make this really strange answer. They said it neither improved or detracted from the performance. And it's like, well, how can you place a strip of plastic on the top of an oar, top of a blade, and it doesn't change the performance? Now, in the scientific world, if you conduct an experiment and it hasn't, and there is not a positive or a negative result, that's called a null result. And that was what Rowing Australia said to the Australian Parliament, that testing on the foil created a null result. Now, that was, we kind of reached deadlock there with Rowing Australia. Okay. The foil went on to be used in Tokyo. Sophie Sauer from the Netherlands, she used it in the women's single scull and achieved a national best time for the women's single scull. In 2023, there was a change of the CEO of Rowing Australia and a change in the high performance coach. And it also coincided with the publishing of a study done at the University of Porto on the foil. Now, the University of Porto had done a 2-year study on the foil, and they had applied scientific principles to the foil, and found that each of the aspects that we had discovered were true. That less catch slip, there was higher power output, power application through the foil. And at this moment in time, in 2024, they've just concluded an on-water study, which is about to come out. So I contacted the new high performance coach, the head of high performance at Rowing Australia, and the new CEO, and I said, look, what's confusing is that when you did a study, you concluded that it made no difference. Well, this study has come out from a university, in-depth study, and it has found that the foil has a significant impact on the performance of a blade. Would you reinvestigate this? We were a year out from Paris, and what's interesting with lies is that it's very hard to remember the lie, especially after a number of years. Well, the new high performance director made some inquiries and discovered that the original trial, it actually wasn't a null result. So in 2018, the study that Rowing Australia did, it wasn't a null result. It was actually a botched test. and the high performance director discovered that it was because of the conditions of the day, the high flow on the Nepean River, and also the instrumentation the instruments used on the day failed. So the pitch system that was used, I'm not sure what happened, didn't connect, but and when I discovered this, I went, "Oh my goodness! Why would you lie about that? We'll go over to the Olympic Centre where we had decided to do the test originally, and we'll redo it." But instead of redoing the test, making sure they did a thorough job, they lied. Now, when I presented this information to the new CEO of Rowing Australia, she said she didn't think there was a problem. And because we were, by then less than 12 months away from Paris, there wasn't enough time to do the tests and to implement the foil. Well, my question is, why, if they knew that they had a group of athletes that weren't as gifted or as skilled or as high performing as those in Tokyo, why wouldn't you want to seek every opportunity to give them the best equipment possible? And that Rowing Australia owed it to the Olympians, those athletes that have given their lives, the best years of their lives for the sport. Why didn't they do the testing? Why didn't they see what was available to our rowers? How can we help them to achieve the best they can at the Olympics? So I do feel that it is a shame that the blame has been placed on the coaches rather than the scientists that were involved in the original test, the scientists at Rowing Australia that have refused to do any testing on the foil and to take advantage of this Australian developed design. And I should say that the foil has certainly been helped by a number of people within Rowing Australia. I had a year with the assistance of one of us top Australian schoolboy coaches, Dan Noonan, who is a bronze medal winner from the London Games, and he gave me hours and hours of time studying the foil, looking at different things we could try with it, and so I owe a great deal to Dan Noonan. I also owe a great deal, tried this and tried that, many in my own club. So the foil is the product of Rowing Australia, and it was just a shame that Rowing Australia has continued to resist any testing of the foil, and so I would like to see whether Rowing Australia would be asking the question, especially during this inquiry, why did they not do the testing on the foil to validate its performance characteristics, and even give it an opportunity for Australian rowers to have used it in Paris. Maybe it wouldn't have made any difference, maybe the results were the same, but I do know that there was one crew that fell victim to a photo finish and they weren't able to progress through to the finals. And it's like, well, if the margins down to photo finishes, Rowing Australia should be exploring every design innovation that's available to them. Thanks.